Simmer down. Simmer down. Shush it. Wow, that's pretty good. Zach, shush it. Hey, everybody, welcome. Hey, shush it. Welcome. I see you. Did you ever come to a meeting like years ago?
No.
Okay. So we've got one new face. I didn't hear how you found us.
I don't remember.
All right.
Oh, he's not on it.
Via Discord.
He used to do VR and HCI.
I co-hosted the VR meetup in Madison, Wisconsin.
Yeah, and maybe it was
That
somebody.
was like 5 years ago or 6 years ago. So
I overheard that.
I'm
Maybe
looking for this, but I just haven't gotten on it until today.
but you're in the right spot. I might have thought of somebody else from that used to be in that group. But
Yeah.
welcome, welcome, welcome. Oh, I got to get that other slide deck up, don't I? No, it's part of the deal. Which one? Which one? Probably that one? Looks like it's got it still. So, welcome everybody. Welcome live stream. Everybody's watching there. Here is our order of events. I neglected to update this from last month, so pretend that says Zach instead of Paul. For 710, we got one. Welcome. What was your name again?
Oh, Stefan.
Stefan. Welcome. The IGDA TC board is all volunteer, and we are not on it anymore. But we are a volunteer. There we are. Man, this picture. Holy shit. Obviously, everything's volunteer. If you would like to help out, if you've got a specific idea or just want to help in general, get in touch. If you want to do both, that's the best. You have a specific idea and you want to execute it by donating time. We kind of centralize all our things on Discord. I think everybody here is on there. Yeah. Here's our regular event night listing. And this is current. Our new event is called Jam Night. What's Jam Night? Just
Jam
try.
night, the one rule is you
Oh,
have
let
to
me kill that music. You talk.
Okay, the one rule is you have to bring something to work on. And you come and you work on it, but you mostly just chat to other people who are also trying to work on the thing. Yeah, it's just kind of like a co-working time.
So does any actual work get done?
Actually, surprisingly, and I did get some programming done, so like you actually do have little lulls that you get some work done, but it's mostly hanging out and talking about what you're working on or what you're excited about. And we had Mobile Robot PAX for the first one, so I think
What's the time frame on that?
time, what do you mean?
Start, end?
6:30 to 9:30.
Okay.
Yeah.
Just like everything else.
Yeah.
And does everybody clear out at 9:30?
I mean, at least we did it once, so we're gonna do it again in June, but we'll probably go to max.
So you're saying it was
too,
packed
so-
or it wasn't packed?
It was packed.
Oh, great.
Cool.
Yeah. It was almost too packed. But in a good way, I guess. Like it was a good problem to have.
And no doubt this was a Noble Robot, yes.
Yeah. Yep. And then we went to the bar after.
Cool.
As usual.
And then our extremely long running, several decades game dev meeting is on the second Wednesday of the month. It's been at Noble Robot, except last month we tried a new space and it sounds like we'll probably be back there. How many people went to that?
Yeah.
2, 3?
And I
Good?
like 98% sure we'll be at 2D HQ again.
Nice
2D
big,
HQ.
nice big space, nice projector,
Yeah.
sound.
Yeah, it's up north. You guys will like it.
We're up north.
Too far. Like Duluth.
It's not that much farther.
It's,
You can get to Space 150 from there in 10 minutes, so it's not that far.
All right.
It's still 90 minutes for you, I understand.
Our third Wednesday is Twin Cities Playtest. Bring your in-progress games, whether they're video games, board games. In theory, you could test VR there. I don't think anybody has. But any state of polish, early, late, or just show up to try other people's stuff and give feedback. And then the best event, fourth Wednesday of the month, you are at it. We have 2 special interest groups. Women Games Gathering on the third Saturday, and new games. What do we call it these days? WAV? WAV?
It's pronounced wave.
At Hennepin Tech. Which Hennepin Tech? Oh,
super
well,
nice.
clicking didn't work.
Bird. So who went to the one that was on whatever? Did you go?
I was there, yeah. Yeah, it was fun. It was good.
Where is it?
It's out in
I
Edinburgh.
don't know where they, like, it was the one that he linked, he did an address to, so it was way southwest.
It's,
Oh, Eden Prairie.
There's two, like,
it's,
Eden Prairie. Is it Eden Prairie?
it's the giant Hennepin,
yeah, you get it.
it's the giant Hennepin Tech.
Yeah, it was very nice.
Eden Prairie.
It was in like this like audio,
Way southwest, Eden Prairie.
audio computer lab. It was
Yeah.
very nice.
Can you describe the building physically?
Not really.
I was looking for city.
It's
Moving on, moving on.
The building is so big, I think Zach can see it.
You'll
from
have to go to
the front door of his house.
All I wanted was Eden Prairie, guys. That's it.
I don't remember that.
It took a long
Our
time.
sponsors that house us at all volunteer org. Noel Roat, several events. Check it out if you're interested in some co-office, co-working environment, especially game related. Red 5 Studios, we are in.
Yeah.
Check them out if you've got some budget for a nice, cool VR AR project. And announcements. So I didn't see anybody sign up for an announcement ticket, but we're welcome to verbally announce. I'll even give you a web browser tab if you're responsible.
We have a summer potluck
Ooh,
on June
Discord?
something, yeah.
Okay.
28th.
I should be logged in.
It's on Discord.
It's gonna, yeah.
Potluck is in food or is in bring your games?
As in bring your food and games.
Food, probably. I mean, you can try bringing games.
It's gonna be outdoors.
It's outdoors in a park, so.
Outdoor games.
You can, I mean, people should bring games if they wanna bring
It
games.
sounds picking.
Also bring food.
Where on Discord?
Announcements
We did a,
All right.
Announcements. at the bottom.
Yeah, there you go.
Saves the
More
day.
There it is.
information pending, but
June 28th.
at, was it?
10 a.m. to 2. It's in the afternoon on a Saturday.
Yeah,
All right,
Or it's in the middle of the day on a Saturday.
yeah.
got it.
And bring some lunch, and there'll be a thing to sign up to coordinate what you're bringing later
Yeah,
on
I'm supposed to do that.
in Discord. Can you tell I read it just before?
Yep.
Any other announcements? All right, moving on. Hey, we've got a not-for-profit now. It's even written here that it's a
Full page.
501c, the real thing. Huh?
Full page.
Oh, good call.
Maybe you can read it a little bit better.
So if you got one of those corporate places and they still have money left and they like to donate to things, see if they'll donate to this because now they'll get a tax write-off. We use it for website, all kinds of things like that, some event costs, and
Booking a park for the summer potluck.
such as a park for June 28th,
That's right.
10 a.m. to 2 p.m., which is the middle of the day. Community plugs, that's where you're supposed to announce that, but close enough.
Oh.
Any other plugs? All right, this is going great. We have some folks that routinely do the Jam-A-Jam, which is a monthly acid jam, so not necessarily making a game or anything like that, but making some art, 2D or 3D. Check it out, it's in the Discord. NISGames.club or club without the dot, depending on if that's in the name, is actually a really great podcast by several local folks. Check that out. Presentations. Hey, it's me. Oops. All right, let's do this. All right, Quest 3 MR for reals. So right before I set the Eventbrite to live, it said no cap, and I just couldn't live with myself because it just made me angry every time I looked at it. But kind of the gist here, if you read the blurb, Quest 3's been, Quest 2 even, it's been poking at mixed reality and AR features for, you know, like 5 years. And it all sucked. Wait, this is a live stream. It was an incomplete feature set. And as of, you know, like this year, a couple months ago, like like let's say March, and especially a bunch of stuff that came out in November. It's pretty compelling as not VR, but like an Apple Vision Pro style experience or a HoloLens or pick your favorite $4,000 headset. Not that it does everything to the same quality level, but the same set of features. Okay. Oops, skip that one. So just a little history. I think most of the folks here are kind of grizzled veterans, but in the beginning, 2016, consumer VR release, there were boundaries. And I just got so happy when I saw this video because of the literally hundreds and hundreds of times that I got to do it. This is the, if I can play it, this is the original Vive setup. How many people did this at least once? It's like half the room. Oh, I'll kill audio on this one.
Complete with the carpets.
Yeah. So even in the beginning, there was this idea of room scale and kind of a standing or stationary boundary. And they did a great, well, the animations are excellent, but they did a great job of showing how impractical this thing they were selling was when you had to move all your furniture every time you wanted to use it. Not shown is you've already mounted spinning laser emitters in the corners of your room at optimal angles and covered all the mirrors and glass windows in your room to avoid laser reflections at your opportune times. Animations are great. What happened to Valve? And then you can see the guy holding the controllers and the headset, not showing a cord to the headset that made everything tangly. And then you'll see a little video inset coming here. This guy with awesome hair. There's a tangly cord. This guy with awesome hair is going to walk around the room with just a controller. First, set him on the ground, leave him really still, and then try to work your computer and get the floor reading, the height of the floor. And he's not doing it very slow. Like this is a medium-ish. You can maybe trim a minute off of this, or 30 seconds. Then you take your one controller and walk around the room tracing things. If you're advanced, you wouldn't do a box. You'd follow your furniture. In his case, the fireplace. So you'd know that, hey, over in here I can swing my arms, but if I put my foot out, I'm gonna get bricks to the shin, and it's gonna hurt. And then inside whatever shape you made, it would draw a rectangle, and that's the space you'd use for games. And they'd be like, that space isn't big enough. What if I just stretch out this corner a little more? Even though I know there's a couch there, I won't get hurt by a couch. And then there's a lot of people in your room and rainbows, and you're ready to do VR.
Standing right in front of the emitters.
So this is a big deal because you couldn't see the room at all. And if you're doing an experience that was slow moving, you'd approach one of those boundaries you made and it would appear, you'd be like, whoa, I shouldn't go over there. Say if you were playing tennis and the ball's coming over and you're committing to a really big stroke overhand, you would just look at the ball like you do and then swing your arm blindly and just smack whatever was over there, whether it was in or outside of a boundary. Or the best videos, I didn't bother looking up this time, but a zombie is there when you turn around and you panic and sprint into a wall. They're all over the place. There's a subreddit, VR to ER, to emergency room, is the subreddit. It's gotten pretty slow there, but it was going full blast. And like, we've got a TV that's still got a nice scuff on it from a Vive controller that we still use. It did not get did this. For the 2018 Lenovo Mirage, really Google Daydream standalone headset, predating the Quest by over a year. And you had to have them, and they were very mean if you didn't have them. Oh, there's, of course, the plane. But also in the beginning, and actually 1 month earlier, was the HoloLens. It didn't get around too much because it cost $30.
Proposal, and this is the bloody HoloLens. Today, I'm in the park.
He's in the park.
So let's have some fun. Really interested to see how this thing is going to work for satellites. Due to the way the lenses work, the way the light comes in, and the holograms are injected, and it's basically, like I said before, it's just like a heads-up display for a fighter pilot.
For fighter pilot? Okay, he doesn't know what he's talking about? How many people used a HoloLens? So yeah, we got the old school crowd here, about half the people. In reality, it's more like 0% of the people. There's no collision risk. That's why. And what that means is like literally clear. You see through it, and then any image you put on there. As shown by this great elephant. You could never darken the image like this. That's not a thing. It doesn't do that. It never did that. This has been recorded in software, not through looking through the optics. It comes with all these, unique caveats. In addition to not having black, essentially, when we wanted to blue screen or green screen a video, we would just record on a black velvet background and do nothing. No alpha channel, no shit, just anything black was clear. And so you'd have to design around that. Additionally, you'd have to design around just these weird rainbow tinting problems in different optics that varied by headset and varied by eye on the headset, having to deal with the diffractive waveguides that they used. So that said, it was still my favorite headset to this day. He's showing some really great use cases here. You can have an elephant or a little guy at the park. Actually, we saw a little bit of occlusion there. So the branch, not cleanly, but occluding part of that elephant. And the interesting part was that it would do that in real time. There was no kind of preset up. You just walk around and be building this mesh, and that's actually in this video here too. The other interesting thing about see-through optics is if you're actually outside, they're not bright enough to see anything, basically. And he talks about that a little bit later, but most of what he said is not technically relevant. So as you're walking around anywhere you go without preset up, mapping on the fly, you're like, wow, I'm going to use up all the RAM on this device. So a big part of the OS is dedicated to mapping in and out chunks, essentially, of the world that you've seen in the past, or updating them and that kind of thing. And then to get any use at all out of this, storing, localizing, and sharing spatial anchors. So setting a point for your zombie with a cake next to the log, going home, powering off your headset, coming back the next day under similar lighting conditions, not at nighttime, and turning the headset on and looking over at the log, and there's a zombie with a cake. That's amazing. So localizing is taking what it saw in the past, reapplying to that to what it's staring at right now that hopefully hasn't changed too much. It was actually surprisingly robust to changes and would generally do what you wanted. My favorite example, we had a project in an ER, so we walk in and there's these little beds, we map them out and we do this stuff, and then we're like, yeah, we're not sure about these curtains. Are they open or closed, like when you're using it? And they're like, both. I'm like, oh shit. What about all these carts that are rolling through that are like, huge? They're like, could be there, could not be. This is in Brazil, so the grammar was, the communication was a little rudimentary and challenging. Could be there, not there. But it did a great job of noticing things that hadn't changed, which is what you want when you're kind of mapping an environment ahead of time and placing these anchors that you want to stay permanent.
It was surprisingly good at ignoring people.
Yeah.
Like chairs, like office chairs.
Yep.
They move a lot. It just would never ever
Yeah.
do those things.
Yeah, that's a great point. Yeah, so the more typical things, in our case, these huge things like the whole curtain around a bed, or this big ass cart full of medical equipment that was the size of, a third of a car or something like that.
Not something you could program as a person or an office chair.
Yeah, exactly. It wasn't special cased as a human. and then access to the front camera, because you're walking around with a computer on your face. Sure be nice if it did something face related. That's something that was there and then never showed up on consumer stuff because everybody was scared, except Google. And then just absolutely terrible spatial input options. No hand or eye tracking in the first HoloLens. You would look with your face and you do a set of pre-canned gestures, mostly the pinch, but pinch was not as easy as it sounds because the depth camera was just in one spot. There wasn't 4 tracking cameras like on a Quest. And so a human pinches like this. See this stream? But if you pinch like this and the camera's here, then what it sees is like one knuckle and none of this. So we would be pinch sideways like a crab, and they would go like, they'd go like this. And you're like, all right, here's the clicker, just push it. And it also had Bluetooth keyboard support. We just ended up using voice commands and that a whole bunch. But separate from that, and even without that, I would say this is kind of the minimal viable product for meaningful mixed reality, that you can walk anywhere, you can see the environment, you're not gonna trip over things, and then you can do something. You can place stuff, you can recall it later, the camera is a huge deal. More so these days now that we decided we want to do all the kind of AI stuff with it. So back to VR land, boundaries carried forward all the way to standalone VR in 2019 on Quest. Despite the fact that the Quest was super capable out of the box at launch of tracking large areas without any pre-setup. This was the second weekend after launch when it was raining the first weekend. This is Zach's car in his driveway and some expert work in tilt brush. A little audio out of this.
I forgot about that. It was so cool when you went and traced stuff in tilt brush
Yeah.
and walked around your fake world.
So absolutely perfect, essentially wearing a little VR blindfold.
Don't brush the dog?
Yep. No, things that move, not good for tilt brush. And even at Oculus Connect, right before it launched, they just did this huge ass demo that was like a laser tag arena, essentially, where they had pre-mapped all this stuff, and the boxes were welded to the floor with a lot of gaffer tape. And you just move around this huge space. And in the same auditorium, far end was the super expensive VR thing that was in malls. Disney had all the Disney licenses.
Oh, yeah.
Anyone?
They had
Pre-COVID.
one in Mall America.
Yeah, they had one at Mall of America. The
Void.
Void.
Yeah.
So we did the Void. It had all this gear: haptics, backpacks, tracked guns. It had smells. It had fire. It had walls and elevators and rumble, and it was great. And then our time slot was up, and we went over and did the Quest inside the laser tag arena, and it was super amazing. And I didn't care about the Void anymore. Just that freedom of movement in VR. You get to kind of see whatever themed environment you want, but just being able to have that freedom of movement.
Sort of like what we
was
do
huge.
at the hockey rink.
Yep, exactly.
This is with pass-through or without pass-through?
Without all VR, yeah. And so they debuted the Quest like that, and then they shipped this thing that nobody could turn off the boundaries except developers. And it's been that way for, look at that, 6 years. So 5 years, I guess this started to loosen up last year. Boundary setup used the super low-res black and white video cameras, which got named pass-through video. And a year later, it started taunting us that it actually knew where our furniture was. There was, of course, no software APIs to access any of this information. And so here's a picture of the setup real quick on a Quest 1 or 2. I don't remember. They look the same at this point. But there's the black and white cameras, and you trace your boundary just like before in 2016. This is a nice small one. This guy's definitely gonna swing his arms towards that monitor. And then it's like, move your furniture. And you're like, my furniture? Oh, you could see my furniture. That'd be neat if you did that during applications. And then a little bit later, it had a feature called Space Sense that most people didn't use because there was a pretty high GPU cost. This is Tony, the scarred ghost from Italy, showing off Space Sense when it came out. His action's actually pretty great.
Not only people carrying my video, so if I'm in a small room, I can always see this around me. And notice that I can even see the edges of
You know
my
what he's saying.
hands and this kind of sound. It's cool for people that come here to play space because in this sense you can
There's
see
Tony's
them.
grandma.
So you know that you have to write something, but you lack the sense of that. So the depth perhaps isn't wrong. But yes, isn't touching this person, and then goes away and starts. Objects of this kind is pretty cool.
So it was especially great. We used it for beginners to just to avoid collisions at the last moment. But if you had any kind of furniture and stuff, you'd just be constantly seeing weird pink lines. And people are like, why are there pink lines? We're like, so you don't walk into them. They're like, I won't. And then they would. So that was around for a while, and then that went away without being announced. And everybody gets in the forums like, where'd it go? That kept me from dying. I liked it. Oops, I don't know how to use slides. Can you tell?
That was recent, right?
Yeah, March, yep. So then also kind of in the same time period up until last year, middle of last year, late last year, just poking at mixed reality features, never quite getting things there to be compelling. Starting with pass-through video, backgrounds for apps. There's absolutely no camera data, no data of any kind coming to the application, so it was literally black and white wallpaper of your messy apartment instead of a cool, Japanese temple where you're doing sword fighting. You could see your apartment instead. And even the examples, this was their official example when they announced it in the developer blog. They're just tracing furniture because they just want to kind of know where things are in VR, because what else would you want to do with it first? There was, it was useless. And then spatial anchors came. They weren't reliable. They were pretty hard to use. And then we got a tracked keyboard and zero image markers. So since the 90s, you've had things that look sort of like QR codes, but simplified. That could be tracked by webcam. They were on cereal boxes, like it was awesome. Nope, but we had a tracked keyboard. We had one tracked keyboard. A year later, second tracked keyboard. And I was supposed to have a prop. Let's see if we can find it. And you're like, Zach, which this is probably important. Which two keyboards? This one? Right here. The Logitech K30 Bluetooth US model, not UK. And then a year later, the little Apple one. You're like, Zach, that's a neat printout. I'm like, yeah, because I wanted a track marker. I didn't want a keyboard. And this worked for a while. And actually, it's showing up in other GitHubs that I found. Up until they changed it so that it only starts tracking when the keyboard's turned on and connected via Bluetooth. It's like, that makes sense. Not to waste the tracking overhead for people that don't want to turn it on and off. But it kind of kiboshed this whole thing.
It still works as long as you have the keyboard.
And it's turned on.
And turned on, yeah.
Yeah, but then you might as well track the keyboard. And it doesn't work for multiple headsets. So the big trick was you put that down and two people stare at it. And then that's your reference point. There was a lot of gimmicks to try to get co-location working and shared reference points and that kind of thing. And then they gave us furniture, but you drew it by hand. And most people didn't, of course. And you had to do a good job. And you had to do a good job using only a cube. So if you had a round table, that was a cube. If you had a corner desk with a curve cut out like I do, that somehow is a cube. Like, is it a diagonal cube, or is it a, we don't need any music here. So this is kind of the pinnacle of that. This is a recent Quest 3 setup where it's doing a lot of the work for you, including scanning the room, but the furniture's still cubes. Like, hey, I wanna have my little cute robot thing run under that table. And you're like, okay, so it's a cube. This part and these little skinny legs, those are part of the cube. And there are some occlusion features in the Quest 3 that are not terrific, but that's what we got. We got that. And to be fair, Quest is a very performance-constrained device, super good value. This is the appropriate thing to do when you don't have an actual depth sensor on the device. So amongst all the things that use, Qualcomm phone chips, only the Pico 4 Enterprise has an actual depth sensor and does something more than that. So we're there. Official support for shared spatial anchors came out, and I got to work on that almost exclusively for a month or almost two. And we went back to carefully manually aligning yourself with some tape on the ground. It was rough, and the docs were rough, and then Meta did a reorg, and even though we had direct phone calls with them, they couldn't actually answer questions. One of the key ones being, you need 2 different user accounts anytime you test this. The service doesn't fail every time, just most of the time. And it doesn't say anything about user accounts when it fails. And that was not in the docs. It was buried in one part of the Unity example, but not in the docs in the feature. So you haven't seen many of those. Has anybody used anything like that in an official store app with co-location? Yeah, I haven't seen one that I can think of. Things started getting better though. You could have multiple boundaries. It would auto-suggest for you, where to put your play space after it scanned the room. Assisted space setup is, I skipped past it, but those cubes would automatically appear. You didn't have to draw them. Sometimes they get labeled correctly, like this is a TV, that's a table, this is a couch. So that's getting kind of good. People might do that if you really prompted them and they really wanted to play your game. And then the Apple Vision Pro released, and suddenly pass-through got very much better in 3 different increments. We got the boundaryless API, which finally meant that we did not need to create a boundary for these things that were all happening in pass-through. And a whole bunch of UI tweaks that just won't stop. One just came out in the past weeks, and we have that new launcher thing that looks like Apple. So let me try that. I have avoided updating to that one. But where this is all leading is actually, so there's a no cap. And the more you've heard it in real life, the more you hate it. So now, like as of essentially March, like you can do real mixed reality things in the Quest. So between the stuff that happened in July and recent OS updates, you can take a Quest out of a box, never set up a boundary, and do pass-through apps. Walk around your house and drag windows with you as you go. And like you want to, vacuum while watching something in your headset, or cook, or all the things you want to do.
Does it know where the floor is if you don't have a boundary?
Depends on how you coded the app. Now it's showing up everywhere, and even in the last SDK, they're trying to do something to force floor level, but they still tell you to set an anchor, and they'll set one for you if you don't do such and such already in your code. Yeah, it's an issue. Obviously, you've hit it. Traditionally, we've always had the choice, when you start up software, the 0 point is really arbitrary. In the very early headsets, they were 3DOF. There was no sense of the environment around you, so it made sense to put 0 in the center of your head. Then with the 2016 room scale stuff, it started to make sense that maybe it's the center of your play space, or maybe it's the center directly under your headset, or it started to get kind of murky. And there's terrible names in the Quest APIs like stage, what are they, stage, head, and floor? Yeah, and what do they mean? Try all of them, see which one is the one you expected. But yeah, that gets murky as you go. And I'm not going to go deeply into it here in this one. I talked about it a bunch last summer, but switching from VR to really a pass-through based mixed reality, AR, whatever you want to call it, is really a big shift in how you think of the world. They did some really convenient things for us in VR. So we do all this painful stuff to do a setup, but then the developer has, hey, here's a rectangle. They're not going to go outside of it because if they do, something will break or they'll die. And so within that rectangle, that's a fixed world space. Do your software there. When you're working with mixed reality, like a HoloLens, like a Quest walking around, like Apple Vision Pro going on the subway, software-wise, it makes a lot more sense to think of the analogy of like you're a boat in the ocean. And when you're lucky, there's an anchor that, you know, there's a lighthouse over there that I can have a reference point, and there's one over here. And walking in between, like, yeah, maybe I've gone 10 feet away from that, but maybe it was actually only 8, and this is all very hard, this tracking stuff, and there's sunlight, and there's plants, and there's people. So until you have reference points, you shouldn't assume things about world, including height, but that makes a lot of things hard if you don't have any kind of like active scanning to tell you, like, hey, I see some floor. That's probably the floor. So yeah, the transition from VR to mixed reality and this weird idea that an app can do both is a little on the silly side in terms of kind of meaningful content. If you're just using a background and transition between, you know, cool Japanese temple and messy apartment, mixed reality, yeah, then it's easy. Yeah, so back to this out-of-box thing, which is clearly what they're going for, is to be like the Apple headset. When Apple just copied HoloLens, and they could have too, but they were too busy redoing the avatars. Anyway, so you can go with no boundaries at all, walking up and down stairs, you know, doing VR things, dragging windows around, recalling them to you. And then you're like, oh, but wait, there's a store full of VR apps. I want to do one of those. And so the moment you start a VR app, you need a boundary. And so now right off the bat, you can either choose to go into that room setup or stationary boundary, which got a little more instant, meaning it would just one click, it's just around you now. You shouldn't move around too much. But because people do move around, you can move around farther than you used to be able to move around. So the people that used to use that feature and still try to use it would now punch things that used to be, you know, the boundary would tell them that there was things there that they shouldn't punch. So, c'est la vie, things change, and you're just the guy that paid for the headset. Now with some of the extensions that came last summer, you can scan multiple rooms in your house, and you can walk between them, and that's pretty dang cool. So it's sort of the best of both worlds, or even farther than we've been in the past. So I did a setup in my basement, I did a setup in the spare bedroom, I did a setup in the garage. There's another API that's not the boundaryless API, but it's closely related, called like boundary visibility. Normally you leave your boundary and everything goes black and the sirens go off and, you know, terrible things are about to happen. Or you can just suppress that and show people like, oh, you got a boundary here, you got a boundary over there, why don't you walk over there and we'll resume our app over there. And now your app not only has to deal with a boundary, it has to deal with, hey, we changed the boundary right in the middle of your run, if you want to support that. So good luck with that. But that's where I think things are headed, is more towards this dynamic mixed reality environment and away from this nice static VR rectangle that we've all used in the past. They have a feature called instant placement, which is simply just what you would do most of the time in the HoloLens is you get that mesh and you raycast against it to place a window or hang something on the wall or or whatever. You can do all those things just with computer vision and no room setup, no scanning ahead of time. And the mixed reality utility kit has a bunch of different examples of ways to use raycasts. And I think, in my mind, it handles 80–90% of the use cases. That's one of the ones that's hoping to get some discussion on here. Shared spatial anchors got not terrible, and I completely missed it because it came in November, and we don't meet in November and December. But there's now easy group sharing, and so we switched from go through an app data use checkup, do all your testing with 2 separate user accounts and 2 separate physical devices, deploying to both, keeping the headsets turned on while you aim them at the place where you placed your anchor. And yes, I've done this. And now you just have a group GUID that you're just like, hey, meta servers, I'm starting a group. This is my shared anchor. And then anybody else that knows that GUID gets the anchor. So you can see some security issues if you use that same anchor all the time. But from a development standpoint, that's friggin' amazing. And then when you want to do the kind of full-featured thing, there's this really slick and pretty involved thing called co-location discovery that advertises to other Quest headsets using Bluetooth. So that's the slick part, is someone else walks into here and you're already, staring at some QR code or something, and whatever your tracked point is, and they want to join in, so you go to your menu and hit a button to broadcast that other people can join. And then so I looked this up. It's part of the OpenXR spec that they built. Anybody running the same Android package with the exact same name and version now is able to join and, receive these broadcasts and join if you don't have another security mechanism after that. So that's not too bad, because Bluetooth goes a fixed distance until someone bothers to make a thing that imitates your app and then sends Bluetooth messages to the internet. But really, that's not going to happen. Maybe it will. It'll be pretty exciting.
That's if you're in the same room, like playing over a coffee table, yeah?
Yep, that's the idea, exactly. Yeah. So talking about co-location, so essentially you just need one position and orientation, and then everybody agrees on it. And so once the technical part, the headset being able to take that data and apply it to its version of the world that it's seen, is handled, there's all this gatekeeping and bookkeeping, and then another guy walks in the door later and you've already shared all the anchors, and I placed a cool zombie with a cake over there. And now he needs to know where all the zombies with cakes and elephants are. But the guy that's already got those anchors doesn't need to know, and just all this bookkeeping crap. So the first API does all that. The second one does all the joining part of that. So
Can you join remotely, like two friends at one coffee table and two friends at another coffee table across the
So
street?
you totally could do that with just the group co-location stuff, except that the headset will refuse to localize spatial anchors because it doesn't see a similar enough version of the world. You could make your own thing of, I've got my own. We did do this. I've got this other people at this other building in this other state, and there's 2 of them, and over here there's 4 of us, and now we agree locally, you agree locally, and then we also.
Yeah, with the tape on the floor, and we're just
Yep.
all gonna point this direction, and we
Yep.
just figured out how to.
Yep.
So if you get like identical living room setups,
So at the first, man, I wonder if there's a picture of that.
That's funny, that's a good idea.
That's 2017 when it happened. And of course, I'm not on Google. That's pretty smart.
Make an NFT marker, unique marker.
Yep. But the problem is you need your world to match as well. Maybe I'll dig it up at the bar. They literally set up about 20 tennis courts with exactly matching gaffer tape, and they showed me, they had them in the back, they're like, yeah, this is the template we used to put on the tape, and they pull out this big sheet of cardboard, like, we keep it around in case one of you guys scuffs up the tape. And I go like this, and they're like, don't. And then because of that, they could map the room once and then copy the binary data between headsets, which is a feature that never showed up. That exists on HoloLens. You didn't end up using it because there's a lot of gotchas around that. You need all your sensors and cameras to behave the same on all headsets. So in a lot of cases, it's almost quicker just to walk around the room with how fast that mapping goes. Oh no, wrong slides. Blah, 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 Pass Your Camera API, that was the one that people are super excited about. I was hoping to do this talk a little bit later because it's still a little immature because yes, we have the access. No, we don't have high performant example code that we can use. So there's a few people that have done computer vision in the past that have made some cool things. And there's a bunch of people that made stuff with extremely low frame rate, like this guy. So with this all piled together, we're basically feature complete, but of course not the full quality of an Apple Vision Pro. So we're feature complete with that HoloLens original thing. But the one that's not here, we'll cover that in a minute, is that live meshing of environments. Spoiler. And in some cases, we're ahead of Apple Vision Pro controllers. Those are handy. I would say the hand tracking is still better. One I forgot to put in here is the upper body tracking, the shoulders and elbows is pretty great on Quest 3 and 3S. Room scale / admitting that VR actually exists, we're ahead on that. And Move With You Windows came out with that new UI version. You're like, what's a Move With You window? It's a window that moves with you so you can vacuum and YouTube follows you around. Like, that's handy for some things, and that sounds dangerous for other things. Like this thing.
Oh yeah, this is
That thing blackjack and stuff like.
So terrible.
I just lost $1,000.
Oh my God.
So this is actually from Quest launch. The reason everything's shaking so badly is there's all kinds of problems with the pass-through at launch. The color and the detail was pretty good, but the frame rate did not match. The frame rate of pass-through did not match the head tracking frame rate, so you do get a judder. And if you're doing it on a bicycle, the judder is increased because of your speed. But I wish I had my stuff in here from Quest 3 launch. I only have stills. But all kinds of times you're walking around outdoors staring at the sun to make sure your controller's working in the sun. And that window's following you around everywhere you go, like, make a fucking boundary. Like, make it now. And then you stop moving, it would move slowly in front of your face to block whatever you're looking at. So this is extra relatable if you ever did any of that kind of shenanigans.
So is he out running it on his bike?
Yeah.
Trying to
Yep. Yep. And there's actually, later on there was a time limit. So I had to start mapping my house faster and faster before the time limit would kick in. You're like, no, start over. Like, it doesn't take this long to map one room. But yeah, that's, sadly it's Bradley. He's a pretty funny guy. Actually, he's in Wisconsin now, so he's not too far. Somebody get him to show up. But where's my world meshing? So Upload VR thinks you might get it. I think you probably won't. And everything's based on this change log from January. Just so I'll read out loud for the stream. We're on a path to remove this user's capability to edit. It does say users, ownership, because this is probably written by a programmer. Capability to edit the space settings in 2025. So developers should work to reduce dependencies on this feature as it's compatible with our vision of high reliable scans that just work even when the scene changes. That last part sounds great. High reliable, just work when the scene changes. Remove the ability to edit. That would be good if the last part worked really good. That would be bad when sometimes it doesn't work. But to take this sentence and then say, that means we get real-time scene meshing. It's like, that would be neat. Or maybe just the cubes move. So we'll see. We'll see what we get. What they claim is coming this year. And that would be swell. And so this is one of the things, if some people have thoughts right off the top of their head or stew on it for a while, like, when do you need that mesh? that if you had a raycast that somehow worked magically without the mesh, which is what we have, that you'd be missing something. And the immediate thing I thought of was, you know, with the HoloLens, it would build this mesh, and then you just shove it into Unity physics, and mostly it would work. So this is literally the project at the end of the first day.
Some HoloLens would get black holes where there was black.
Yeah, and it just as a great example, oh, that first one, that was a pretty good bounce. What is that bar? Second one, not so good, went right through the stairs.
Yep.
There it goes. What is happening here? And again, right off the bat, using just the cursor and gaze, and here's this terrible, terrible mesh that it built. And you can watch it update on the fly. So if you're using this mesh for something like with normals or lighting or shadows, like holy shit, it would look terrible. And then it would change once in a while in subtle ways. And yeah, you could record it and play it back, but
I
you
think
just,
it was the ghost of people. Like if you turn
Yep.
around and then you look somewhere else and you turn back where somebody was, you get like a blob of a person that slowly disintegrates into that.
yep. But all our tools are built, you know, for meshes. So, yeah, so what was the name of this free robot? He came with the animation, Mixamo robot, there he is, yep. So like literally, like I knew Unity, I got the headset, I did some tutorials, end of the day I made this was a thing running, I was controlling it from my phone, I could walk out to get the mail, the robot could come with. Like, it is handy for game devs. You know, might as well mean her to devs and consumers. And but without that mesh, with just a raycast, you know, I could have said, walk over to the spot on the floor, and would have had to figure out how to navigate around colliders and stuff. So that's where those boxes would come in, that we're getting some boxes. And those don't need to be super accurate until you're trying to hide behind them and you got a round table with skinny legs. But for navigating around a door frame and things of that nature, I think you can get awful far with the updated raycasts. And with the Step API, which is very performant and pretty, not foolproof, but awfully good, especially for how fast it is. You can build a mesh. Whoop. Oh, damn. I'll come back to it. I got another link to this guy's stuff. Oh, that was the move. There it is. Is this the thing I just clicked? There we go. It's been done. This guy at Purdue. This is for real, the Quest, meshing things in real time. And not a bad mesh. He says the main problem is just false positives because he's not looking over time to make sure it's not like just a computer vision error.
Cool.
And closing a door and then immediately bouncing stuff off of it, yeah. And seeing some of that pass-through distortion.
Yeah, that's great. Actually seeing the balls disappear behind the wall and everything.
Yep. But so the interesting part is he did all this. He did all this, and it's awesome. And actually, it's open source. And if you can get it to run at frame rate, let me know, because mine's freezes up for like a second every couple of seconds. And the actual thing he's got out there for people to use doesn't use this. It uses just the raycast because it's a laser tag game, and mostly you're shooting and getting some cool effects and blocking some bullets. And raycast is perfect for that. So.
In the same spins.
Yep. Yeah. So to be clear, this thing he does not use because it takes up too much of the performance budget, and for his application, gets everything he wants without doing this. But
what is that raycast hitting against? Like, what is that?
I got a picture. Yeah, I got a picture. I'll show you. Let's just admire this for a second more.
Or is it just detecting distance just at that point?
Per frame, you get I think it's the next slide, maybe. Let's skip that and come back. You get slightly low res depth image of kind of everything seen by the color camera. Well, actually, it's using the, I think the two lower front-facing cameras, but it's very forward-looking and it's trying to cover the viewport that you're looking at. So it's not, you're not getting information down here or up here, off to the sides.
That's where he's building the mesh from?
Yeah, over time, and then he's just doing a truncated.
Remembering what he can.
Yep. And just doing a truncated sign distance field. But anything happening per frame like that, you gotta be on top of memory management and performance and all these things to be able to do it. So it is possible, but you really need some skills. I don't know why this was a GIF. Let's go back. Son of a bitch. Don't ever hit back. All right, let's see if we can find it on so they've come out with some more in-depth projects that for some reason they call motifs. Does anybody know why? I just
Internal language. Named after John Motif, right?
but I mean, what does it have to do with programming? So this is all done with essentially with those raycasts against this depth information. The depth information is only done from stereo disparity from the cameras. And so you can do an awful lot, and most of the things I can think that we ever did would have been fine. It's just these cool little physics things that I would do on my spare time that wouldn't work great. I don't know what all's in this video. This is XR Dev Rob, who obviously works at Meta, and he's got a lot of support for the Vision API. We'll talk about him in a second. Anyway, this project, this image I was trying to show, is really in depth, like how you can use it with custom shaders. This is one of my favorite ones of using your hand for occlusion, but not doing a full occlusion, changing to a stipple shader instead, which is neat because when you want to do full occlusion, it didn't work out that well because you have a cube and then you have a round table and it's got skinny legs. So having something that just kind of kicks in and isn't per pixel accurate is really the way to go on this stuff. But this is a huge, huge project. That's why it's called a motif, I guess. You might remember this stuff from last year. They just kind of added on to it. But it does do occlusion. The occlusion hasn't improved. It's okay, it's better than nothing. But it's far from Apple Vision Pro, as you can see, which has amazing, amazing occlusion with the coprocessor that's in there. And so I'd say that's one of the areas where Quest is behind and won't catch up, and because it doesn't have a depth sensor, it's just really great occlusion. So you just got to kind of think of ways to work around that. Backing up to the camera. Shoot. Where's the...
So he was holding his hand out in front of the guitar to show you that his hand was in front of the guitar? He wasn't trying to hold the guitar or be behind
Yeah.
the guitar?
Yep. Yeah.
What a strange decision.
Well, yeah. It's one of the most common things is your hand needs to occlude stuff, and they're just kind of
it
showing.
felt like, here, look, you can see I'm not occluding the guitar. I should be behind the guitar.
Oh yeah, because it's a guitar. Yep.
Yes,
Big or
because
not
it's a thing you hold and you might put your hand
You
behind.
can put it from anywhere. Shows a thing.
There we go. So getting to the pastor camp, perfect.
Occluded guitar.
So the pastor camera is not everything I hoped and dreamed, and that of course makes sense on this super maxed out phone chip that's trying to do all this tracking and 90 frames a second for 2 separate screens without dropping any frames. So the frame rate is not 90, frame rate is 30. The latency is kind of long, and it varies, which is the real kicker. And there isn't a timestamp of when that image was captured, and there is not. And the thing you want even more than that is the projection of when it will show up on the headset. With this light, it already showed up, like you already missed the boat. A lot of the nice hardware would be like, yeah, we're about to show this, in 20 milliseconds or something. And so that gives you an easy way to sync up with the real world pass-through and what you want to monkey around with here using the camera data. So the upshot is that essentially you don't do real-time things like you hoped and dreamed like I did. The resolution's not as big as the full screen. That's kind of expected. I didn't expect that. It's also not the full visible size and shape. So that's something else to deal with. You do get all the geometric stuff you need to turn that into whatever render space, however you'd like to call it, so that's all good. Going back to those examples, no, sure. So XRDev Rob has made his own GitHub called Quest Camera Kit, and it's better. You want to look at both, but it's better than the official one. So as a great example, tracking will never keep up, period, with what you're tracking. So you don't show the visual feedback that you're not keeping up. You do some tracking, hopefully then it stops moving around and you drop a spatial anchor and switch to that, which is super high performance. And that's just the way it is. They used QR code tracking, terrible choice. But there's freely available libraries, which is why they used it. You want to use like an Aruco marker, something with less detail on it that can be seen from a better distance and can be tracked with less CPU.
The shorter your address for a QR code, the less dots it has.
Unless,
From the HoloLens experience.
yep, unless you're actually reading the data on that QR code to help people
Yeah, that's what means something.
join up.
Yeah,
Yeah.
other than a bit.ly link, which is what I did.
Yep. You can do actual on-device tracking. It's just not fast. So it's more like, yeah, I see a cat. And in reality, I saw a cat, 10 frames ago. I'm telling you now that I saw a cat. And you need to put that on a separate core. You need to run it, separate from all your rendering and stuff, and just wait for it to be done. And then this is like the perfect example of something that feels absolutely magical. You don't know it's not real time. And again, it's got that delay of 40 milliseconds, which in Quest land is like 5 frames or so. Because you're aiming at a thing, you're pulling a trigger, and then this block changes to say, hey, you picked up that color. That can all have some latency in it as long as you're not tracing and updating in real time. You make them do that input to initiate it. If you were actually looking at your samples as you drag your pointer around, you'll see like, oh, I made it to a brick, and then later like, yeah, it's red, and I made it to a plant, and it's like, yeah, it's green. You'd see that latency. So just thinking of ways to hide that becomes kind of critical. And just lots of great stuff, like all the stuff you can think of, just not necessarily real-time stuff. OpenAI, I haven't run that one. I don't pay money to them. And then there's a good example that I couldn't find again. Somebody modified the video streaming. So obviously, Paul said he's going to show us how we can stream somebody else's view and get really sick. And this guy just recorded and just built an MP4 on the device. And then you could play back history of yourself. So his example was wandering around and finding keys that he had placed, 30 seconds earlier. And again, this is while you're wearing a VR headset and probably getting sick from the fact that it no longer tracks your actual head motions. The official GitHub examples, not quite as great. Trying to remember actually what was in here because I never came back to it. Another on-device machine learning thing. It kind of blows my mind. I mean, that's, I guess, one of the unique things about having a Quest versus having, AR glasses that need to talk to the internet, is that you can do some stuff on device. And if you were truly a computer vision person, like this is what you'd want. But for a general sample compared to what they normally hand out, like, you can't dig into this. Maybe one of the orientations. So the laser tag, this is the guy that did that meshing. It's open source, so that's why I know you can compile it and have a really low frame rate version of what he showed on his Twitter. Everybody should get this. Make sure to get the beta version. As you may or may not know, there's different links as you're installing apps from the Quest App Store. You definitely want the beta channel. You'll know that you're in it because there's this rigmarole with email confirmation that you want to join the beta. If you happen to install the wrong one, I think you can change it on headset later. That's where we dug around and tried to find the UI. Buried way in your settings, there's the actual versions of your apps that are installed. And if there's a choice for a beta channel, maybe you'll see it there, maybe you won't. But you'll definitely see some version there and it won't say beta. And then you get the wrong one. The official released one doesn't do any kind of live detection of obstacles. The beta one does it, but it does it with that raycasting rather than the mesh building that is very visually impressive but kind of expensive. If you get this and you're lucky to have a couple of Quest 3s, you can play laser tag with obstacles and shoot at things and close and open doors like he was doing with the mesh version. And we all look over at the pile of Quest 3s in the corner. Maybe next month. And we'll play it out there. Hopefully people will be eating outside. The other stuff I saw that just was so impressive, this German guy who unfortunately posts everything to LinkedIn is tracking a soccer ball or a variety of different balls. This is his first thing that he shared. And this actually does the best job of hiding latency. So would you guess that there's any latency of that ball hitting that target? Like, just by the way he's kind of designed the graphics and stuff, I would say no. But it is that five or so frames. And it's because those things, accelerate. Yeah, they start out not moving. But you can expect that, and cracks take a little time, and then they fall a little bit late, and that's exactly what the physics said they should do. Some of his later examples, it's not hidden as well. I'm not sure what he's going for here. It's kind of cool. It's cool because he's throwing an actual ball around the place. And there you get a great view of the tracking latency. Yeah, so the pink thing is his tracked object, and the video is obviously what you're seeing him pass through, which itself already has about a frame of latency. And to do this, he just used OpenCV. Has anybody used OpenCV in Unity? Did you pay for the $90 plugin? So you kind of bound it yourself? We'll talk later, because I don't know if I want to pay for a $90 plugin. And it hasn't gone on sale yet. I've been watching it. The same guy, is doing a Ruko code tracking. I'm not sure what this video is. This is kind of the traditional. Oh yeah, this is the good one. This one I've seen. So here's his markers. They're not being detected yet. They're too oblique and too far away. And again, that camera API is not as high res as the pass-through you're seeing. You'll see as he skateboards around his office. There you go. They snap in. And it's a little hard to see. They kind of fine-tune for a couple of frames.
What does happen? Yeah, good.
So this blue thing just starts out in a random pose. As soon as his headset can detect these markers, it reorients the blue thing. Yeah, not super self-evident from his modeling skills, which are kind of like mine. But once this happens, other things snap into place. And with a space this huge, you probably wouldn't roll with one marker that's now behind your headset and expect it to keep orientation. You'd throw, one every 10 feet or so. Or more likely, you do that initial orientation, load a bunch of spatial anchors that have already been assigned for this room, which do all this for you, and you don't need to print paper and not destroy it on the ground. But the impressive part is here, you can't really make it out. but he's basically at full frame rate. CPU use is only 60-some%, and it's only at CPU level 3 out of 5. So, like, this is lightweight.
Everything's created.
Yep, exactly. And then he's going to release this. We'll get to play it eventually. It's going to be awesome. He's working on, he's a little too responsible. Instead of telling us, go buy this one ball, he's saying, you know, I'm going to support all these different colors and different patterns and blah, blah, blah. So setting up obstacle courses, which, again, don't see any latency because we're just staring at a real life object. And the obstacle course, all the tracking, of course, doesn't feel like it has any latency at all. And then here, getting a little fancy with the graphics, making some bricks, and now the latency's back. Interestingly, so that orange ball, that's a real ball. Somehow he bought something that color. Obviously the sparkles coming off of it aren't, and those work really well. Whoops, shit. You don't have this, because again, they're kind of random and they're not exactly centered, and you see that lag when you hit the big brick wall. As you move through targets, it's fine. You're like, oh, that audio is kind of late. That's fine. So really, it's kind of a design thing to to come up with this. And also, you know, the obvious thing here is if you're tracking a ball, you don't have to try to track feet anymore, which was never that good. No matter how much effort you put into it.
Most effective feed tracking I've seen is controller.
It's what yeah, that's exactly what I'm referring to. So yeah, once you get the hand tracking, you can put the controllers on your shoes. Some more basic-y stuff. But you know, these depth maps now can have color. Oh, what the hell was that? I can't use slides or Twitter. You know, these voxels can go over time. You don't have to use this rainbow image. It's easier to make out what's happening when you're not in the actual headset, because it's kind of brightly colored. But when things are moving slow enough, you know, the latency on your hands is not noticeable. You wouldn't say it's bad. And we've all been trained actually to accept hand tracking with some latency in it. All these shadows that you're seeing, that's more of an artifact of, you know, the camera doesn't, he has to pick a spot for that voxel, and everything behind it he doesn't have any information on. So it's a rendering artifact because he's not maintaining things over frames, he's just doing the current frame. So.
Design the game where you need to move slow.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yep. And any virtual things can move fast. Any real things that you're tracking, you don't want people to notice that there's that lag. This guy is running everything through diffusion models. As you may or may not know, diffusion models like square, flat images. So not an exact match, but still. This is the thing we all wanted, but we wanted it to happen in real time. and be perspective correct. And not have something different happening for every square. But, oh well, baby steps. You can imagine this would be pretty great, you know, to do inside your house with your own dog.
Turn them into a plane?
One of these, yeah, has like a Godzilla thing show up in the background.
Still there, or what's going on?
He's sending it to OpenAI, I think. And just restyling it. Yep.
So it's doing it for each of those individually and just watching.
Yeah. So we will get there. I mean, Meta will give it to us probably at the next Connect. I haven't actually seen all these. Is this happening? Is they all kind of similar? Music's a nice touch. Yeah, that's not that interesting. He's got one of people in it. Let's see if I can find it. Maybe this one. So doing some image segmentation, and suddenly this is less stupid. the fact that it's 2D and it has to fit in your frame. And it changes every time you click the button. So
It's the lid, that's why.
that's pretty awesome.
It's not matching any of this.
Yeah. So, yeah, it's going to be great. It's going to take some time. I don't remember if I had any other good. Oh, this has nothing to do with it, but has anybody used the immersive debugger? This is what I found when I was scrolling through the history of SDK releases. Anybody use this? It's a debugger that runs on a headset and lets you add and tweak variables. You just got to annotate them in Unity to expose them to the debugger. Anybody? All right, somebody use it. Tell me if it's good.
I mean, I can think of times I wish I had that.
Exactly. Yeah, I've written that code like 1,000 times. Camera, meshing. Okay, bonus, Google. Did anybody watch the Google I/O demo and stuff? So I think the way I said it in the invite was, I'll tell you that what was shared or what was said and all the things that weren't said at Google I/O, because there wasn't a lot AR related. It was oops all AI, and just these strange, like there's some awkward applause moments in Meta conferences, but like this was like, look, the AI coded a circle mouth that moves when audio comes of talking, and the whole audience is like, oh my god, we need that tool. We're at the developer conference, we want that. That's a good thing. But there was a 20-minute live demo. Upload, snipped it, and put it separate. The thing to know is the demo was of prototype glasses that something like them will be available next year, probably. They're called Android XR glasses.
I've never done this before.
And they look pretty good, actually. So, skipping ahead. So again, all AI, that's fine. That's a good use case. And they did the normal stuff, asking questions, doing stuff that you could do on your phone. And then just AI agent stuff that will come to your phone. And if you're running these glasses, they've got like a 1 or 2 watt power envelope, so they are tethered to your phone for compute. But anyway, for some reason you can't use your hands. It'll be fine. You'll love it. And they did some live translate stuff. It's worth watching. Not part of the demo, but I'm trying to think if there's anything. One of the good things in here was they're showing a pretty realistic version of what that additive display is going to look like. And they didn't shy away from dark pictures like this. Like that dude's got a dark beard and a black background, and under glasses you get kind of reddish. And if it moves in front of something bright, you get kind of can't see it. That's going to be the experience. But actually, that was a great example as it dipped down there. Anytime you get a light background, you're going to search around your environment for something dark to stare at. And that's just the way it goes. Or you're outside on a sunny day and you're going to search for shade. But along with all this stuff that I'm not sure people want, was Google Maps. That's the one I wanted to show. So she's taking pictures, putting them in albums. That's all stuff that's kind of handy if you're going to use that camera for stuff. Like you want to, if you're already using the camera, you don't want to pull out your phone for the last couple of steps. Somewhere in here, we get a map. There we go. Holy shit. And then her networking started to go, or the glasses overheated, who knows. But by the time they got to the live translation demo, hers had just completely frozen up. The other guys were working fine. But yeah, just that, like, yeah, I don't want to walk around with my phone like this or like this. Yeah, this is the thing I want, is walking around with the Google Maps in my eye. And that's about it, because I don't travel to foreign places. And there'll be things that we don't expect, but that's worth checking out. The Muhan, maybe not everybody knows what that is. It's the Samsung answer to Apple Vision Pro. And it's literally Apple Vision Pro, but without the great compute of the Apple chipset. It's got the same thing in our Quests. Oh, that's sad. Because there isn't anything better available. But it does have 4K micro OLED displays, which means my bet is it's $2,500. We'll see. They literally had no new news about Muhan other than what they told us in December. It runs Android XR. Android XR is Android OS customized for XR. That makes sense. Also, these little 2-watt things, those are Android XR glasses. Do they run in OS? No, they do not. They are 2 watts. Why are they Android XR? They are. It's all Android XR. Everything is Android XR. It was called Micro. This is probably a work in progress. Don't tell marketing, but it was called Micro Android XR because literally it's just syncing display back and forth and camera images and sensor stuff. You'll be able to develop for glasses later this year. Info at Augmented World Expo, which is coming right up in a couple of weeks. Unfortunately, right in the middle of Apple Worldwide Developer Conference. Apple scheduled this on 5/20, so that's unfortunate. But I don't think it was conspiracy. They generally stick to this week in June, just bad luck. I think they more ignored. Like if it was conspiracy, it'd be a good thing to do because somebody's got to flinch first on the Samsung headset and features and cost, and Apple's got to figure out what Google's doing for dev kits and decide if they're going to try to chase them or not. They got to decide if they want to show things that don't exist, which is not their traditional way of executing, but they also sold the iPhone 16 at Christmas time with AR or AI features that don't exist, right in the ads. So they got a lot of pressure right now. So we'll see, but next month we'll have a lot of good info. The thing you're probably going to develop for is called XReal Project Aura. And the important thing is these are not those waveguide glasses they demoed for 20 minutes. They're called bird bath optics, and actually we are very lucky. We've got some bird bath optics in person. XReal, the glasses manufacturer used to be called Nreal, but then Epic sued them because they're like, is it a game engine or is it glasses? And we have more lawyers than you, so you change your name. And they're like, okay, it's XReal. And then the XReal developer that makes VR games is like, okay, I guess so. Bird bath optics are just a half mirror. They're like a slanted prism. I don't know if you can see them there. They're fairly thick. These fit on anybody's head. Who's got a small head? Small head. The important thing is like, wow, these are sunglasses. I know what sunglasses look like because look at them, they look like sunglasses.
I'm not gonna be able to see. Oh, it's not.
No, yeah, it's not powered on really. And then a human puts them on their face, and those prisms get in there, and you're like, wow, those are like sunglasses for a dog? Like they're out here? Everybody look at the profile, turn around, show.
The bar also lands like right in front of my eyes instead of above.
So, yeah, and then the height comes in because you're not looking through this entire...
Like nose pieces.
Yep, lots of nose pieces. You're not looking through this entire thing. This far back, the light engines are large. They're not large anymore. But part of the reason this is there to cover up the fact that half of this is opaque and the other half is tiny. So you would end up shifting them up a little bit too. So from the front, you're like, I'm getting some sunglasses. And then on a human, you're like, whoa.
So that would really work with like those bug eye, like 70s glasses.
Yep, yeah, and then you get some corrective inserts for them, and then they just kind of slot in between, and it gets even weirder. So these are not the, let's call them sexy waveguide glasses that you saw on stage, but these exist, and you'll be able to buy them, and you can already buy them, and they've been out for a couple of years. And David's buying some. They just haven't shipped yet, but other people on Reddit have started receiving them.
Stop talking about it.
Are you wearing them now?
No one is
That's
wearing
true.
it now.
And if you're really on a budget, just put a little green LED behind your real glasses and just tell somebody that you're talking to AI. So that will be the dev kit, Project Aura, and it will have a consumer release, which makes sense, I guess. Somebody, Google didn't say any of this, some official person on Reddit, who's probably in trouble now, maybe the post's not there anymore, said, yeah, that's next year. Like, so the current thing they're selling is called Extra 1 and Extra 1 Pro. That's this year. Next year is Project Aura. And Google hasn't said that. So they will be tethered like this. They will be not necessarily exactly bird-bath optics because they've got this new modified thing they licensed, which is about half the thickness, which you're like, wow, that's a lot better. And it is a lot better, but still, when you see those pictures, this is actually one that they showed on stage. So it's not, I mean, I guess they're not hiding it, so that's good. Like, they could have picked somebody with a giant head and a recessed nose and a big brow raise, really big cheekbones, and then it might have looked, but.
Upload VR showing the pose that the website probably doesn't.
Yeah, so actually, if you do a Google image search, you get 90% this, and you get 2 or 3 that work where they snap the image of the thing on stage from Google slide deck that is this model.
What's the FOV?
So the FOV, yeah, so that's tricky. It's measured diagonally. In AR, we measure diagonally. And that's especially tricky because the thing you see isn't even square. It's sort of like this pincushion shape because of the optics. They're like, no, we don't measure the skinny parts. Just kind of not that part, but the other part. And so, yeah, all bets are off. So when you see numbers, it's diagonal. VR headsets traditionally now measure horizontally. They finally settled on that. But they also juice their numbers by not showing you the same thing in both eyes. So like the Quest 3 has less binocular overlap. And that's pretty much the only reason it has more field of view than previous headsets, is because they're counting what your eyes see as a set, not what one eye sees. And they just don't show you the same stuff in both eyes, which for some people is uncomfortable. For me, it's uncomfortable. Other people don't care.
So with it work, it's 100% overlap?
Yeah, if they get aligned right and the IPD is right. So there's software IPD adjustments. The one you bought has 2 different sizes physically for large head, small head. We don't know anything about Project Aura, like literally nothing. But in terms of a number, one of the Google executives said 70-degree field of view. So that's okay. It's not amazing.
What are they tethered to?
So eventually they're going to be tethered to your phone when they're selling them. They're coming with a Qualcomm Snapdragon XR chipset specifically optimized for spatial computing that deeply integrates Google's Gemini AI. And they're going to have optical see-through and virtual see-through. Look, they invented another word. That's when you put the tint. Actually, they're probably going to be active tinting, I would expect. So I would think that chip is going to be equivalent to one of the flagship phone chips for this year. So they will cost a lot more. When you buy the extra one, it's like $600, something like that. And you get glasses, and then you can either use a phone, or they'll show you a nice affordable compute puck for $200. Yeah. And that would be nice, but again, this is a high-flying product. It's everybody's flagship. You know, Qualcomm, Google, Samsung, everybody, X-Real. So I'd expect that thing to not be cheap, that dev kit. But it doesn't have to be. The hardware isn't expensive. So that is the bonus of this, is it's not expensive, it exists, and it's for both eyes. They did not commit to having binocular displays on, I don't even know what to call the things, the Android XR prototype glasses. In fact, the one they showed had a single display. And that can be a little challenging for some people. It depends what eye dominance you have. And not everybody knows their eye dominance, but this is fun. I planned this out ahead of time. Everybody stick your arm out full extension and point straight at my nose. Everybody, straight at me. Or yeah, you're all about the same distance. All right, now keep it right there and close one eye or the other. One's an exact match and one is way off.
Yep.
So how many?
Both
I don't know. You got 3 eyes? I don't know. Really split the difference? Try it again. Do it again.
Yeah.
It should be just one eye is almost exact match and the other eye is.
I think we're overthinking.
I feel like I go middle with the
So this is a little different than left-handed, right-handed. Right eye dominance only 70% of people. How many left eye dominants do we have here? That the left eye was a match. 1, 2, 3. Are you pointing or matching? 5. So we have like five left eye and 1, 2, 3 out of 11. So closer to 50%. The sample size is too small. But the point being that we're probably going to get only right displays on most of these. And if you're left eye dominant, you probably want to try one out for like an hour and just see if it feels just awful. The Google Glass was right side only, and it felt just awful for me. But it was also up here, which sucked, like to try to do that constantly. Not clear where they would put the waveguide on these. You saw their kind of center view for the demos, but
I was able to switch it.
yeah. Does anybody do archery or shooting and they can switch, or?
I do a lot of magic eyes.
There you go. Yep.
No, I really-
Out of control.
Well, I've got this whole thing that I've got a fake lens in my right eye.
Oh, sure.
And so the sizes are slightly different. But
Yeah. Yeah, so well, I have no idea. I would expect that maybe you've transitioned if you weren't when you started to left eye dominant.
But when I'm pointing at you, I can see both of them.
And there are people that can do either. So, I learned about this when I
can
started
pick which one
shooting a
to come
gun. If you do a gun or archery, you need to know
Yeah.
which is which. And if you're a kid, they're not going to tell you. There's like, shut up and use the bow. Shut up and use the gun, which you shouldn't say to a kid. But it matters for lining up shots. And it's much more challenging to do the opposite that you're not natural with, but you can retrain. And so that is always a thing, but for putting some glasses on that you paid a bunch of money for and then feeling sad and uncomfortable, good to go on that knowing if you're left eye dominant.
They made the rifles with stock, like crooked to the side, so if you're like right-handed, but left.
Yeah, because if you switch hands, then the safety and stuff's all screwy. Yep.
They make a lot of guns that are both hand dominant, safeties on both sides. Or
Yeah.
something like that.
Like stuck literally left.
Really, 45 minutes dog.
So in addition to the keynote, there was only two, which is not that bad, sessions on XR stuff. Just stuff. So their whole idea is they're going to bring over Google Android phone apps and just tack on features for XR, kind of like Apple did. Makes sense. So there's one on UI stuff, and then this one is a little bit illuminating on what kind of features. Of course, they're going to support all varieties of all things, so not every headset will have all the features. So good luck testing. But some of the stuff they're going to have out of the gate. So hand tracking. Muhan does have eye tracking, so that'll be in there, although it wasn't mentioned here. It also has a depth sensor. So it'll be able to do that real-time meshing, just like Apple. And it's good because Samsung owns their own sensors, and everybody got annoyed that they were still putting them into the phones. And so they finally pulled them out of the phones after a couple of years. Yeah, so those dev tools are already out. There's also add-ons for Unity, so just a package install. Has anybody poked at it? Has anybody looked at any of it? Yeah, it's really not this crowd, I don't think yet, until we get some hardware that we care about. So we'll see how that all goes. Home stretch.
So,
That is it.
just, I got a little bit lost.
Yep.
This Android XR OS that we're talking about, it's gonna run on this headset that hasn't come out yet,
Mm-hmm.
and the glasses? Or just
No.
the headset? Just the headset?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. So in the beginning, it was an OS called Android XR. Runs on the headset like Quest runs an OS.
Gotcha.
And then they're like, hey, you see these glasses? You know how much power they consume? None. And also, they're Android XR. We're like, that doesn't make sense.
Yeah.
They're tethered to a phone. Is the phone Android XR? No, that's Android. Well, so an XR with an Android is Android XR. Okay. Yeah.
Okay.
But what the glasses will do is just radio, Bluetooth, essentially.
Okay.
Images, sensor data, camera stuff. You know, I would think even the hand tracking won't be baked into a chip here. It'll go down to the phone and get processed there. So expect some latency. Yeah, I mean, they haven't said any of this. You just have to just kind of stare at it and intuit what's happening. They're really kind of focused on bringing in 2D developers. Now that they've not released any Unreal tools at all, we see why the Unreal VR developers are completely rejected, because they're not doing it. Not out of the gate anyway. But Apple did that too, and you know, within 6 months there was a decent way to build from Unreal without any help from Apple. Yeah, that's all I got there. Back to the raycasting. We thought of a use case where you gotta have a mesh, and raycasting won't, again, magical raycasting against the world won't solve it. Anybody got something?
Say that again?
So Quest today, you know, we've got magical raycasting, even though we don't have a mesh to pass off to Unity physics. Think of any use cases that need that mesh other than physics, which is the only one I can think of. I mean, obviously it's nice for pathfinding, it expects the mesh, but really you could make some shit out of boxes that we do get and pathfind against that. But, occlusion, I mean, good occlusion is nice, but that just doesn't exist. Other than on Apple Vision Pro, which has a chip that's doing it per pixel.
Jumanji style special effects.
What do you mean by Jumanji?
Stuff growing up across your room.
But you can raycast to plant it.
I think. Or yeah.
But yeah, intersections, it won't intersect right
Yeah.
if it should.
So what's the frame
About
rate for
movie.
this thing?
For which?
For the ability to match, for raycast match?
He was running that pretty close to full frame rate, but was taking the whole CPU to do it. Anybody see? Twitter has the worst compression.
I can see it's red.
Red is bad. So this is 90. This is about 45 right there. Anything below 90, you don't get to go in the store. Although these days it's not enforced.
So, if
Yeah,
it
there's a lot of
tracks
distortion there.
everything, can you track the drops finally, or?
Yep. Yeah, so like that ball example is being tracked at 90 frames a second. It just has some latency. By the time you've received the frame and processed it, you're looking at a position that was 4 frames ago. So like the, let's see if I can find that dude again. So there was one example that was showing it. I fucking hate slides. This guy, Christoph. Yeah, he had one that showed it really well. You can see it there. This isn't the one I'm thinking of, but the yellow thing is the tracked. It's supposed to be in real time. It's supposed to stay, like if it was working in real time, it'd be on the ball or always 1 frame behind.
But for things like ball
You can only predict if you know when your sample was, and they don't tell you, there's no timestamp. And it's not even, because it's not even with your frame rate.
It's not there.
Yeah. Yeah, and that jitter that you're constantly seeing on the yellow, that's because, you know, this frame rate, it was a little later than the previous frame, kind of a thing. So you just don't show it. You track it, and that happens, and you make sure the user doesn't notice that it's happening, visually or otherwise. But
Need a little LCD QR code with the current time on it.
Constantly beaming.
and then you pass that through a machine AI to tell you the time offset. Yeah, it should be doable. I can't understand why it's not doable. Like at this point, I initiated the camera, you know, hey camera, give me an image. Like I know when that happened. Maybe it's coming in a future API, I don't know. And obviously everything's about the AIs. This is not probably the use case they care about. You know, it's uploading the images to places and doing those cool segmentation things and stuff like that. Replacing jobs, stealing art.
Assimilating.
Any other? Thank you. Wrap it up. Oh yeah, these original glasses also had the, whatever that new term is for VR. You put this in front of them, bam, VR.
Oh.
It's like those glasses from Hitchhiker's Guide.
Yep. the peril.
Whenever you're in danger, they just go back.
That's awesome.
See, no kid afraid.
So David, I think that's a wrap. We can shut her down.
Say bye, Zach.
Bye, Zach. Thanks for coming.